Yeah, at this point, if it says murder in the title, you really shouldn't be surprised. Hello everybody, welcome back to Meddling in Antiquity. My name is Teray, and today we're going to be talking about the film Agatha and the Truth of Murder. Now, before I get into a discussion about the film, there's a bit of a true crime element to this particular movie. So I wanted to cover that particular instance first. So, just about everybody knows Florence Nightingale. She was one of the most famous nurses during the Civil War, but what people might not know is that she had a goddaughter named Florence Nightingale Shore. Now, Florence Nightingale Shore was also a nurse. She followed in her godmother's footsteps and was a war nurse during World War I. Unfortunately for Miss Florence Shore, she was found beat to death on a train in 1920. Now, it's weird because there was a lot of mysterious circumstances, and the case itself didn't come to a resolution until about 6 years later. And that is where we get to the film. So now that I've introduced a very brief, very interesting element of true crime that a lot of people might not know about, let's get into the story. Diving straight into the film itself, Agatha and the Truth of Murder came out in 2018 and is a speculative film revolving around that kind of imagines what the possible circumstances around Christie's 11-day disappearance in 1926 could possibly be. Which, another element to a very mysterious woman who wrote some of the most incredible and most continually well-selling mystery novels in history, selling lower only than the Bible and Shakespeare. So this 11-day disappearance of hers has kind of been a cause of speculation for historians and true crime writers for decades, because she never told anyone what happened during those 11 days. Those 11 days, whatever happened in that time, she took to her grave with her. No one knows. There's no records, no writings, no anything. There was no documentation of what could have possibly happened to her during those 11 days. Now, this film speculates that the circumstances behind Christie's disappearance were self-made. Now, at the beginning of the film, as I said, it takes place in 1926, and at that point, Christie has reached a very low point in her career. People are starting to be able to guess the ends of the stories in her novels. Her writing is becoming predictable. And her marriage is also collapsing. Her husband is having an affair and wants a divorce. And essentially everything in her life is falling apart. Now, this film speculates that Christie was approached by a woman named Mabel Rogers, who was a nurse on the front lines during World War I, and is asking for Christie's assistance, in solving the murder of one Florence Nightingale Shore. Now, this woman, Mabel Rogers, her and Shore were romantic partners, and obviously, Shore's murder devastated Mabel. Understandably, if you spent that much of your life with someone, it's understandable that after 6 years you would get fed up with the lack of care revolving around this case. Now, Mabel approaches Christie with evidence and a list of possible suspects. So, Christie decides that in the midst of everything that's going on in her life, that she's going to disappear and she's going to take on this case. And that is exactly what she does. So she adopts a fake identity. Her and Mabel go out to this house in the country, very much has the same feeling of "and then there were none," because there are groups. There's a large group of people. I think it's about 14 of them. But they're all gathered at this house, and they all have some connections to Shore. Now, essentially, they're using this to eliminate suspects and try and find the person who killed her. It's a very good movie. It's a fun movie, and I'm not really a fan of Agatha Christie's personal life. As I said, I've talked about the checkered history of Agatha Christie's ability to name her books without insulting somebody and then there were none video that I did several weeks ago. But this particular film really does explore Christie and what possibly could have motivated her to assist in a case like this and to kind of become that focal person. Now, the case is solved at the end of the film in 1926, and Christie does return, and then immediately after that, she wrote her next, she wrote a Poirot novel, Death on the Nile, which is the direct precedent to Murder on the Orient Express, which is commonly, I believe, her most popular work outside of And Then There Were None. Now, Christie came back from that 11-day disappearance invigorated and with essentially a new spirit, and her writing was better by the thousands. It was her writing ability, her ability to create twist endings increased drastically at that point in time, which is interesting and why I think this film kind of lends itself to being a very interesting speculative film, because if you're involved in an actual true crime experience and a hunt for a killer, you're going to take some of that home with you, and you're going to want to do something with what you've learned and the things that you've seen. Which is why the film is so interesting, because for a speculative film, it seems incredibly believable, especially looking into Agatha Christie and knowing the kind of person she was and knowing how increasingly good her writing got after that 11 days of just being gone. It is a very good film. I do recommend it. It's fun. It's a fun watch, and it really is a beautiful story and a really interesting true crime case. I mean, if you're a true crime fan, I recommend it anyway, because the murder of Florence Nightingale Shore is a real true crime case, and it is a very interesting true crime case. So, with that summary of the film out of the way, let's get into final thoughts. Agatha and the Truth of Murder is a movie that I really enjoy watching, and I don't enjoy watching it because it's about Agatha Christie. I enjoy watching it because on its own, it is an incredibly fantastic film. And I mean, even at the beginning, there's a bit of a disclaimer that kind of tells you that the film is 100% subjective. It is simply a speculation of the possibility of what could have happened. But the film itself is really fun. I do recommend watching it. It's a very interesting look at because there are a lot of other elements that do play into the film. There's a very of the suspects that they have in this house. There's a varying degree of class. There's a varying degree of race, and there's some gender politics at play in as well. And it is all very well done and very true to the time. And I really appreciate how well the whole film is made. I do recommend watching it. Even if you aren't an Agatha Christie fan, if you're just a mystery fan and you need a good mystery movie to watch, I 100% recommend Agatha and the Truth of Murder. Now, that I think about wraps us up for this episode of One-Off Wonders, and I will see everybody on Friday for probably what will become my favorite episode of Formative Fashions. Bye!